Welcome everyone. Let's just wait a few more moments as people join us.
Yes, join.
So I think we can start now officially.
Do you think?
I think so.
Okay, let's go.
So welcome everyone to the European Equality Gala Online. I'm Evelyne Paradis, the Executive Director of ILGA-Europe, and it's a great pleasure to be co-hosting this evening with the legendary and fabulously dressed La Diva Live. La Diva,
nice.
welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this fabulous event. We are going to celebrate the work of the fabulous ILGA-Europe, and we are going to celebrate also the resilience of all the LGBTI people all around the world, especially for last year, which was very, very tough on many of us.
Well, thank you very much for so graciously accepting our invitation to be here. And I'll take a moment already to thank our sponsors of the evening, Google. Thank you very much for your ongoing support to ILGA-Europe and all of our work.
Okay, so the support of Google, as you said, is very important, but today we need also your support, and we are here to celebrate the work of activists of Europe and Central Asia, and see what is happening with some very special guests. And we are also here to fundraise. We need some money in order to help strengthen and represent our movement for the human rights of all LGBTI people. So far you have already donated. How much have we donated?
3,126.
3,126. That's not good. I'm sure you can do more. So you have to give more all throughout this event. I count on you.
Yes, indeed. We do count on you because your support is needed. Tonight is a moment for all of us at ILGA-Europe to come together with friends and allies to show support and solidarity for LGBTI activists who are at the front line across Europe after what's been indeed a challenging year in many ways for LGBTI communities and the LGBTI movement. It's our second time hosting this European Equality Gala in the digital space. But as always, whether we're in person or online, this annual date of bringing together our friends, supporters, allies is extraordinarily important for all of us at ILGA-Europe. While more and more of us are getting a sense that we're moving out of the worst of the pandemic, here at ILGA-Europe, we know that the impact of these past 15 months on many LGBTI people, activists, and organizations has been severe. And it continues as so many of our members are still spending their time providing basic support like shelter and food to members of their communities, especially the most marginalized amongst us. We're also in a moment of increased political repression against LGBTI people, and we're seeing a rise of LGBTI-phobic hatred on the streets and online in too many countries across our region. This is very tangible for us at this very moment, as our team has been spending the last week working very hard and very closely to make sure that the calls of Hungarian LGBTI groups for real actions in response to the anti-LGBTI legislation adopted by their government is heard by the European Union and across the region. The challenges also feel very real as we look to the 5 grants that we've made in response to immediate security risks just in the past month. This said, the last year has also been awe-inspiring in so many ways, as we've seen how ILGA-Europe's 600 plus member organizations have continued to work tirelessly with such passion and energy with and for their communities despite the challenge they've been faced with. All of us here see how this movement consistently puts people first, their welfare, their quality of life, their sense of themselves as valuable, equal human beings. To all LGBTI activists out there, I want to personally say it is a true privilege to walk alongside you. There is also a lot to build upon. Beyond hateful political rhetoric, more and more people are supporting LGBTI communities, as we saw last weekend with the very successful Warsaw Pride, and 10 days ago with Sofia Pride. We're also seeing the mobilization of people in support of LGBTI communities within Hungary. This is where we need to spend our time and energy, on making the positive voices tune out the negative ones. We're also at a moment where governments across Europe can actively choose the right way forward for LGBTI rights. There are legislative proposals and action plans on the table in several countries, and governments have the opportunity to ensure that our ILGA-Europe rainbow map and the picture for LGBTI human rights looks a lot brighter this time next year. Our job at ILGA-Europe is to support and strengthen LGBTI activists and organizations across the region so that they can withstand repression, but most importantly, continue to make positive change happen for their communities. It is also our job to advocate on their behalf with both European and national governments and politicians to make sure that they act to make a real difference in people's lives. Your support this evening will enable us to continue to do just that. Here's a short film to show you the highlights of ILGA-Europe's work with and for the LGBTI movement in Central Asia and Europe in the past 12 months. Tonight, I'm asking you to take on a very crucial role by supporting the LGBTI movement alongside us. From Brussels, my incredible team of 20 people works tirelessly to support the work of groups in over 50 countries and to make sure that their voices are represented at highest level in Europe on a daily basis. We do what the largest US-based LGBT organization does with 5 times the number of staff and a budget at least 20 times larger than ILGA-Europe's. So this evening, our team is asking you, I am asking you, to help us get the resources we need to continue to make a difference. Click on the link appearing on the chat or scan the QR code and donate, whether it's 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 euros. Every donation matters. Give us today, or give us, if you can, every month. If we want to see LGBTI rights remain and be at the top of the agenda, particularly at the time when these rights are under threat, we need all of us to play our part. And I can assure you that your donation does matter and it does make a real difference in our daily work.
Tonight's event is being streamed live on all of social media networks of ILGA-Europe, and the hashtag for tonight is hashtag IE-GALA 2020. So if you're on Facebook or on YouTube, all you have to do is share this video and encourage your friends and family to donate. You have to encourage them to donate now so that you can help all of the LGBTI community. And now to start with let me introduce you to Ben Hunt. In 2019, he was appointed by BBC News as its first ever LGBT correspondent. Since then, he has been covering for BBC News, of course, as well as creating documentaries about racism in the LGBTI community, LGBTI movements, and more recently about the LGBT-free areas, in Poland, zones in Poland. So Ben is here to talk about this issue and especially the issues he's seen rise to the surface.
Hi, Ben, and thank you for being part of the ILGA-Europe Gala this evening. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. Your appointment to the BBC as its first ever LGBT correspondent was in 2019, and congratulations on being appointed to that post. It's a pretty major appointment, really, and step in your career. It's relatively recent, really, 2019, and in that time, I suppose, over the last, throughout 2020, there's been unprecedented upheaval across the world, and particularly for LGBTI communities. So what has it been like for you to cover LGBT issues at this time in the world?
So thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Ben Hunt. I'm 29 years old, he, him pronouns. And yes, I was the BBC's first LGBT correspondent, and it is incredible to be here. Thank you so much. It has been a roller coaster being the BBC's first LGBT correspondent and telling these stories internationally. There have been some incredible highs, there have been quite a few lows, but overall it's been a fantastic journey, and I've loved being able to tell these stories on an international stage and bring these audiences on the same journey that so many are going through across the world. I would say that it has been difficult, yes. Diving into some of these areas and exposing the injustice and the things that people are going through, from Poland's LGBT-free zones to Senegal hiding LGBT HIV positive members of their population. It's very scary to speak to people about what they're going through, and a lot of these issues aren't really picked up and covered by international media. So I do feel like it's kind of on me to tell these stories, and as a result of that, it does get quite taxing. But we are at a very weird time for LGBT rights internationally. So to be able to be in a role that does shine a light on some of that injustice and some of the progress that's being made as well is just a fantastic opportunity. And I genuinely feel blessed every single day to be able to do it.
So picking up on that, we do see a lot of media coverage of Poland in particular, and
Yes.
a bit of Hungary of what's happening there, but they're not an anomaly in the context of what's happening across Europe for LGBTI people and communities. Why do you think it is so difficult to get the media to pick up on the more nuanced stories of the issues that are facing LGBTI people?
Ooh, I mean, when you find the answer, please let me know. Please let me know. I think it's difficult. It's like, I know when I put a story out, I know the stories that will get attention, and I know the stories that will do well and will be clicked on and shared and potentially go viral. And if there's one thing that I found out over my time in this role, it's that for me, UK stories travel, US stories travel, anywhere else is a bit of a struggle. And I'm not sure why that is. Like in my role as the BBC's West Africa correspondent, which I did as a secondment for a few months, I found that like my engagement across every piece of social media was just dropping because of these African stories. And it was really shocking to me because I'd worked for BBC Africa previously, and then obviously I'd become the BBC's LGBT correspondent. So to go back to kind of what I was doing before and to tell some of those stories and to see that people weren't interested in what are ultimately some of the most horrific and most unjust and just outrageous things that are happening to people across a huge space of land. It was wild. It was really, really wild. So I think it's maybe because these issues seem so far away from people's own lived experience, they find it difficult to resonate with what people are going through. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's that the media organizations and the social media companies don't prioritize platforming these stories in the same way as domestic stories. So international stories just don't get as much traffic, and therefore maybe they're not put into the spaces. Or maybe it's just that there genuinely is no interest. Maybe it's just that people just do not care. And if in the time that I've been in the LGBT correspondent role, I have seen some LGBT people that just don't care. They've got their rights, they've got their man, they've got their dog, they've got whatever, and they're good. Like, they're just like, I don't need to pay attention now.
And there is that idea that things are done in many countries, that, you know, we have marriage, for instance, in many countries, and that feeling and I suppose misconception that everything is done and dusted is out there. But I suppose really what's coming to the fore in the news in the UK, we see that is not really done, because we've seen a sharp rise in anti-trans voices.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of coverage in the media of those voices and about that debate, and we call it a debate. I don't think it should be called a debate because it's about people's lives, really.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think those voices that have really risen in the UK to such prominence, what do you think their effect is on trans people and communities?
Well, I know the effect because I speak to people, I report on these issues, I investigate these things, and the effect is severe. It's really quite scary, to be honest. I mean, I have to be careful because I work for an impartial news organization, and the BBC does platform all sides of a story. And for me, that's one of the reasons I wanted to work for the BBC, was because it is important that you give the facts to people and then allow them to make their own decisions about whatever. But with this, I mean, this is people's lives. And I suppose it's when there's so much fake news that is out there and there's so many like alternative facts around trans lives, it's quite scary to be sat in what is ultimately quite a privileged position in this role, to be able to just look out and see what's going on, and to do that and see that there is such adversity towards largely innocent body of people it's scary. And especially for young people as well. Just before Christmas, I did a story about the effect of the puberty blockers ruling in the UK and what that means to young people. And the amount of complaints that it got from people to saying that like, we shouldn't be platforming these trans young people to speak about their experiences, and we shouldn't be speaking about the puberty blockers ruling and all of these different things. And for me, I became a journalist to expose what people are going through and expose injustice and expose all of these different things. That's literally why I became a journalist. So for me, as LGBT correspondent, I want to get to the heart of like, well, what are people thinking and feeling? Like, what are people going through as a result of this? So yeah, on the ground, I am seeing a lot of pain. I'm seeing a lot of hurt. I'm seeing a lot of fear as a result of the toxicity that does exist in the UK media around trans lives. And that's not to take any side on social media or anything like that, but just to see the actual fear and the distress that this is causing. It's real.
I want to stay with the anti-trans voices for a moment, because, you know, they're not just in the UK, and
yeah.
It's a spreading phenomenon, really. And I think on the other side of that coin, the LGBT community have been seen as a very strong and unified and successful force for social justice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the rise of those voices within the community itself has a kind of sows division? and thereby maybe reduces our strength in numbers as a unified force.
If there is one thing that I've genuinely noticed since taking on this role, it is how fractured the so-called one LGBT community is. And I think it's fascinating, especially at times like this in June, where suddenly corporations are trying to attract every single member of the LGBT community with one specific campaign. Paint something with a rainbow, sprinkle some glitter on it, and add some unicorns, and it's done. That's it. They're going to be happy with it. And since coming into this role, like you have to understand that there are so many different views, so many opinions, so many lives, so many privileges, so many lack of privileges. I mean, the intersectionality is real. The idea that you do have multiple parts of your identity and the way that they intersect can hold you back. It isn't one homogenous group of individuals. Yes, we share several experiences with each other and with the rest of the communities, but actually, like, you can be individual within that. And yes, that does stretch to opinions on marriage, especially within gay marriage. I know a number of cis gay men who did not want the marriage. They did not want marriage to be successful for LGBT people. I know a number of people that think that they don't want to adopt. They don't believe in surrogacy, maybe. And yeah, it also extends to trans lives as well. I do know some LGBT people who are not supportive of trans lives. And this is why I think it's so important to dig deeper into these topics and into these experiences, because the more that you paint the LGBT community as one community, I think the more vocal some of those people will be to speak out against whoever. And that's why you're seeing some of these fractures. But for me, covering all of this, I mean, it's sad to see it on the ground and see what it means to people and to those that are really affected by it and disadvantaged by it. But it's also quite worrying as well, that the lengths that people are going to be heard now, especially who are LGBT, and where their views may be seen as controversial in the rest of the community. Like, you are, from a looking down perspective, yeah, I think it is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
So we talk about, the divided voices within the community, but of course, within the LGBT community, if we call it one community, there are a lot of other marginalized voices. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the intersections there, and those voices that aren't represented from many intersections in society. Mm-hmm. How do we make sure that all the voices in our communities, so I'd say the plural communities, mm-hmm. How are those voices represented and included?
I mean, again, when you find out the answers, let me know. This will be great to know. But I do have a few ideas. I think for me, it's about getting out to things that I can't speak on personally. I will always speak to others on. So I have like a WhatsApp group of people that when I do a story, for instance, or I'm thinking about a story, I kind of go to those people and be like, well, what do you think about this? And they can kind of give me their perspectives from like the non-Ben, the non-cis, black, 29-year-old, gay male, whatever. They can't, they aren't me. So they can kind of give their perspective on things. And that's been really important to me, because when I did come into this role, I genuinely thought I knew a bit of everything. Like, I really did. And it's taken being schooled by so many people within these communities that I'm like, wow, I really need to read up more. I need to educate myself. I need to understand. So yeah, I think it's that. I think everyone can really benefit from just speaking to people more and just understanding their own lived experiences. But I think the internet has enabled us to do that. If I want to find out the experiences of an asexual, agender person, I can literally search the hashtags on Instagram or on Twitter or on TikTok, and I can find those lived experiences and I can speak to that person. And obviously, not to say that everyone's going to want to speak out personally based on their thing, because not everyone is an activist, not everyone wants to represent themselves on that stage. But if people are willing to do that, then what a way to learn. Like, it's incredible. Like, the opportunities are out there. You've got blogs, you've got YouTube channels, you've got media, like traditional media, all of these things. There's so many resources that are out there to learn more about these experiences, that to the point now, like, I would say that a lot of so-called marginalized communities may not even class themselves as marginalized, because as far as they know, they've got their community, they're living their best lives, they've got their audiences, they've got their platforms, and they're happy. So yeah, I don't think that with traditional media maybe not covering certain voices in the same way, or maybe advertisers not covering it in the same way, I don't think that has like a direct reflection on what people actually think about their own identities now, because representation is out there. Like, it's happening, whether you like it or not. People are literally standing up to be counted. So yeah.
Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you another biggie.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, Ben, what do you think the role the media it needs to play for LGBTI people?
Whew. When I joined news, I very quickly realized that there was not really anyone that looked like me or sounded like me doing what I wanted to do. And therefore, I had to make my own path. I would hope that in me getting this role, other people are realizing that they can do this. I'm not saying I make the job look easy, but because it isn't easy, but I would hope that some people have realized that if Ben can do this, I could maybe do this as well. I would hope that the media becomes more representative of the people that are out there reading and watching the content that media organizations make. I think you've seen as a result of Black Lives Matter, I'm looking at some UK news creators. I'm like, wow, like there's been some real change, some real change. So I think it's over the next few years, I'd really hope that representation does increase amongst more diverse communities. And to be able to see that on the inside would be fantastic. But I think from the outside, that's where you really need to see it, because it isn't an us versus them mentality. Like, I report on the stories that people tell me. And if people stop telling me things, I have nothing to report. So it really is, it's a humbling experience that people will go through things and think, I need to tell Ben at the BBC about this before anything else. Sometimes before the police. They'll literally call me and message me before they go to the police about whatever they've been through. And that is such a humbling thing to know that I've built up that trust. And that's what we need more of. We need people to trust those that are providing the news, because these are huge platforms. This is your experiences. This is what you're going through. These stories need to be told. So come to us. And if you don't feel like you can come to us, do it yourself. Become a journalist. Everyone has the power to, right here in your hands. So put your story out there and see what can be done.
Well, Ben, you do make it look easy, but that's because you bring such incredible professionalism to your role and such dedication. And it is, it's great that you're there, and it's great that you're representing, and that you have such a commitment to telling our stories and every story. So thank you again for joining us this evening, and I wish you all the best with your career going forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben, for joining us this evening and for so spontaneously accepting our invitation. So Ben and Brian just talked about the sharp rise in anti-trans rhetoric that we've observed in the UK over the past year. Sadly, this trend is not unique to the UK, as we see it spread in more and more of Europe. In recent times, it's been very present in Spain, where where actually a trans rights law has been debated. So to talk to us about it tonight, with my colleague, Keenan Russell, ILGA-Europe's Senior Policy Officer, is Ariadna Vigo from our member organization, Despertrans from Spain.
Hi, I'm Keenan, a Senior Policy Officer at ILGA-Europe, and I'm here today talking with Ariadna from Despertrans, a trans-led organization in Spain. Ariadna, we've all been hearing a lot about Spain in the news with the proposed law on the integrated law on trans issues, which was, well, it's the center of a bit of controversy. There's a process within the government as well as within the parliament. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what's happened and how the trans movement in Spain is responding?
So first of all, hi, Kieran. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you, well, this very nice moment with all of you. Well, it's a long journey. I mean, this bill is actually it's the second time that it's presented. Like, it's this is a bill that was drafted by, well, the different trans organizations and also the previous government in 2017. And well, because of the parliament dissolution, it was lost because, well, that's how it works here in Spain. And then, well, it has been reintroduced. And that's the problem, that in that reintroduction, well, the coalition changed, the relation of forces changed. So the Socialist Party, which is sort of in favor of trans rights, but they're a bit outdated in how they see trans rights. They're, well, not too keen into, well, gender self-determination. They're still trying to, well, propose that there should be like these guarantees that you're trans, and it's like a lot of confusion. And the other party in the government, which is this new left party called Podemos, well, they are, well, more modern. They wanted to, well, to introduce a bill that's, well, more in line with other European legislation. So that's the clash. There's also a generational clash within the government, because the socialist members of the government are actually older than these new left party members. So there's also a generational clash there. And the problem is that, well, while there were a lot of discussions within the government and the organizations, we arrived into a blockade because of the Socialist Party, and which is the majority party within the government. And other parties, other political parties, proposed to introduce the bill as a parliamentary bill. Like, okay, the government is not introducing this bill, so let's try it the other way. And of course, there were not enough votes to approve it. It was downvoted. But it's been a very long journey. The weird thing is that the Socialist Party just this week approved a trans rights bill in the Canary Islands. So there's a lot of like contradictory things regarding these laws here in Spain, which is very amazing. There is a lot of fracture within the Socialist Party, in my opinion. And well, I'm living in a region that is ruled by the Socialist Party, and which is Navarre, and we've got one of the first laws, trans laws here in Spain, and it was approved by the Socialist Party, and they're really in favor of our law. That's the problem. It's like, okay, why do you have this discourse in regions, but in the nationwide level, you don't want to? What's going on there? That's the summary of what's happening here.
It sounds really confusing.
It is.
To be a trans activist or one of our allies in this moment, how is the movement responding? How are trans people handling this situation? Well,
trans people, fortunately, in my opinion, are living their lives really peacefully. I mean, of course, there are there are aggressions, there are instances of violence. That's something that is, well, unfortunately, that happens. But in general, like, Spanish society is evolving towards more acceptance. And I've always been of the opinion that society evolves quicker than laws. I think that's a very anthropological truth. Like, that's how it is. And that's what's happening. Well, I mean, in regarding trans lives, the trans movement, on the other hand, is really, well, first of all, of course, we're upset of what happened, but we're like, well, we're in a high morale. We know that this is just, well, we lost a battle, but we're not losing the war, and well, we have to try new strategies, start negotiating again, change our ways of pressuring the government and confronting the Socialist Party with this contradiction, which is, okay, why are you supporting these kind of bills at the regional level and not at the nation level? That's very weird.
Yeah, indeed. And that sort of leads into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the project that Desperate Trans is doing, supported by ILGA-Europe. your goal was to get sort of a better understanding of attitudes in Spain towards trans people and present the lives of trans people in a more positive light to counter this sort of prejudiced, divisive argument that's happening. Can you tell us a bit more about the project and your experience?
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's we're fighting against trans unawareness. That's our main goal. Of course, there's transphobia, but trans unawareness is what we're actually dealing with. I mean, people are accepting, but the problem is that people are ignorant. That's not their fault. I mean, people are not obliged to know about everything, but we're trying to bring awareness, not just visibility. We are your store clerk. We're there, and we're normal people who are living their lives, and we're part of society. That's the main goal of our project. And of course, we want to show that we've got a photo exhibit that's really interesting, showing a lot of different kinds of trans people of different ages, non-binary people, a lot of different ways of being trans, which are all valid, and to show that there's a lot of diversity within the trans community, and that diversity is part of the diversity of society in general, and that's something that should be cherished. And that's more like the cultural part of it. And of course, we're also we're going to work with a survey company that's really interesting at what they're doing, and we want to measure how good our hypothesis is. Well, like, okay, what are the prejudices? What's the actual level of trans unawareness, as I call it, and what's the raw data? That's something super important before doing any kind of communication strategy. Otherwise, you're like shooting in the dark, and we don't want to shoot in the dark. This is a long-term battle, and okay, we've got a 1-year project, but we're not just working for this year. We want to work in the long term, and that needs data, science, and of course, solid discourse.
And the project that you're doing is part of this sort of peer learning process within the ILGA-Europe Creating Opportunities program. What has that process been like for you? Do you find that to be useful in the work you're doing?
It's absolutely marvelous. I mean, it's like, it feels like home. That's the way I put it. Like, I'm always looking forward for our next meeting. And it's really, really, really enlightening to share those spaces with all of you guys, and with a lot of different people with different experiences from all across Europe. That's absolutely amazing. That's one of the good things of this technology we're using right now, like it's super, 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 super important for me and for our organization to be in contact with you, with all of you. And it's brought a lot of good advice, a lot of support, and a lot of fun, of course. It's really, really, really positive, really. I don't know. I can't explain. I think the best way to explain it is like that. It feels like home. It feels like you're part of something, and it feels that you are actually driving change together with a lot of allies from all other places, and that's super, super important because together we're stronger.
Exactly. And so as we see this sort of rise in anti-LGBTI forces generally, but also anti-trans forces specifically across Europe, what do you think is the importance of us working together in dealing with that problem? And where do you see ILGA-Europe fitting in to that working together against those forces?
We're a very small organization. We founded our organization in December 2020. So we're a small organization. And for us, smaller organizations, newborn organizations, to be part and to be in contact with well-established like umbrella organization like yours, it brings a feeling of safety and a safety net that's super important because and a lot of guidance and a lot of experience. And that, first of all, in my opinion, it allows us to save time like there's a lot of experiences that we're already bad experiences. I mean, that we're not going through because we already been given advice that's super useful from other people in the program, and that's amazing because that makes us way more efficient than we would have been without your help. The end result of that is that we will be, and we already are, way more efficient to help people, because actually that's part of the thing. And we're not here just discussing how awesome we are. We're trying to help people, help real people who are here, who I personally know, and other people who are living in Madrid or living in other regions, which, well, maybe I don't, or we don't know them personally, but we are reaching out to those people, and people are reaching out to us, and that's super, super great. And we've got a responsibility, and that's a responsibility so big that we need this experience, we need this knowledge, and we're getting that knowledge from you. And I hope we're also sharing our knowledge, our little knowledge, to other people who also need it.
From my experience so far, you absolutely are. Well, thanks very much for making the time to chat with me today.
No, thanks to you.
The dedication of Ariadna is very important, and your support tonight for ILGA-Europe helps activists like Ariadna to carry on the good work and encourage them to carry on the good work in Europe and Central Asia, and making them at the heart of the decisions at the highest level, which is really important. So by donating tonight, you will make sure that they can manage to do all this fabulous work. And all you have to do to donate is click on the link appearing on the chat or scan the QR code. So I need to check with our fabulous people here tonight. What is the amount so far?
3,679.
What? Only? No, that's not good. That's not good. We have to reach at least 5,000. So I'm going to wait for donations. Can you tell me whether people are giving now? No, I'm only joking. Right, and now some positive news. You know, there are very, very few positive news, so we have to stress on this positive news to show the success of LGBTI activism. The government of Montenegro has adopted legislation to give same-sex couple the right to civil union, and that's a first in a Western Balkan country. So all I have to say, sorry, is Montenegro 12 points. Drag Queen Eurovision, of course, you know. And here to talk to ILGA-Europe's policy officer, Belinda Deer, is Daniel Kalezek, president of Queer Montenegro.
Thanks for joining us, Danielle, today. So Montenegro is about to celebrate the first civil unions of same-sex couples. What was the journey to this achievement, and what's the significance for the wider region? It would also be interesting to hear like what's next, because of course I know there have been some issues with implementation. Because of course, you know, in our work at ILGA-Europe, we've been working on bringing this issue to the attention of the EU.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to talk about this important issue. Yes, we had an 8 years long journey that is almost finished last year when the law is adopted, but we are expecting to have the first unions officially in July, on July 15 this year, when the law should take into the force. So is it going to happen or not? We will see. We are at the moment not so optimistic because 26 bylaws should be amended in order to basically have all these rights in practice and to be able to exercise all of the rights. And our current government is not so fast in doing that part of the job at the moment, but we do hope so still that we will celebrate actually, because last year when the law was adopted, because of the COVID, we didn't have really a chance to celebrate in a way that we should, but we do hope that in July this year we will be able to actually celebrate love and all of the rights that we will probably have.
And what's your opinion on the significance of this legislation for the wider region?
Yeah, for the Western Balkan region and for pre-accession countries, it is extremely important because Montenegro, as you probably know, was the first EU pre-accession country that adopted this kind of the law. And from the very beginning, we knew that it will be some kind of motivation for other countries, for our neighbors. And 1 year later, now we can see the process is ongoing in Serbia, and hopefully in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it will start at one more point, and in other countries also. It is extremely important, and especially it is important because all of the people from the other countries will be able to come to Montenegro to register their unions. So they are on basis on that registration, probably they will be able to ask for all of these rights in their countries, hopefully, especially because we know that all of the Council of Europe countries at the moment are obliged to provide certain rights to same-sex couples.
And what is your experience working with ILGA-Europe in the context of the region of the Western Balkans and Turkey? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on the role of ILGA-Europe in the region and the experiences of the work that we've done with you, obviously, over the years before I joined, of course, as well.
Yeah, regards that, I must say that more than a decade ago, when I started my activism, ILGA-Europe had one amazing project called Step Up, with a number of trainings and number of really important activities for scaling up capacities of the activists. And that project was focused on the Western Balkan region. And I, at that time, as not much experienced activist, but willing to learn, had an opportunity to learn a lot at that moment. And I'm really thankful to ILGA-Europe for that opportunity. I believe these conferences are also really important, providing us opportunity to do a lot of networking and to talk and communicate with donors, but also on the political level regarding the ongoing processes on improvement of the legal framework of the LGBTIQ persons in the Western Balkan region, but also all around Europe. The role of the ILGA-Europe is, I believe, still extremely important.
Would you be able to tell me anything about your favorite ILGA-Europe conference?
Regarding my favorite ILGA-Europe conference, you know, in most of the things in the life, first time is something that we usually remember as the best. So my first ILGA-Europe conference was in Malta. I think it was 2009. So it is still one of the best and my favorite, because that was the first time in my life when I met around 400 activists from all around Europe, and I was completely speechless, because at that time I was coming from the country in which we had zero rights, we had zero visible LGBTI people, and in one of the reports at that time regarding the human rights of the LGBTI persons in Montenegro, it was written that Montenegro was a dark spot on the gay map. And after that conference and after that experience, I was at the time part of the Juventus NGO. We started with the implementation with a project named Montenegro a bright spot on the gay map. So we are on the road to make it really bright, I believe. And the ILGA-Europe was and still is part of that process.
It's interesting that you say that. I never knew that. And now you're the green spot on the ILGA-Europe rainbow map.
Yes, we are regarding the legislation, but not, unfortunately, still not regarding the social acceptance.
Indeed, but yeah, it shows kind of that ambition that you had and the success of your work when you've been pushing for these legislative changes to go from the dark spot to the green spot in such a short amount of time is very, very impressive. I wonder if there's any other reflections you would like to share about your work in Montenegro and the region, or maybe hopes for the future and work with us.
Yeah, we have a complicated political situation, I would say, in all around the region, especially in Montenegro at the moment. So something that happened all around the world and around Europe a few years ago or 5 years ago are happening now here. We are always late with everything, and we are also late with the far-right political structures taking the power. So the speed of the processes will be, and at the moment it is, much slower than before regarding the improvement of our rights. Our rights hopefully will not be in danger, but in order to keep them not to be in danger and to be able to improve and to continue with improvement regarding our basic human rights, I believe that we will need a lot of international support, and the situation is not good. But is it going to be worse or better? It is something that depends on us who are working here on the ground, but also of the whole international community. So this is my call for everyone to support us in our fights and in our efforts to keep bringing the positive change.
Yeah, and we will definitely be there to help with that. I think that's all the time we have. Thanks very much for joining us. I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us tonight. And let me echo what Belinda said. ILGA-Europe will always be by your side, as for the rest of our member organizations, to be there to support you to continue to bring about positive change in your countries and for your communities. We actually really passionately believe in the power of the movement to bring about change at all possible levels, from politics and laws to social attitudes, and by doing so, to make a real difference in the daily lives of people.
And thank you for all the people who have donated so far. I need to know how much we've donated so far, my dear.
4,048.
You 4,048. But that's not enough. That's not good. You have to donate more. You can donate 10, 20, 500, 1,000, 1 million. Who knows, you know? And to make sure that our voices are heard at the highest level. I count on you.
And now we come to a very special moment of this evening for me personally. When I reached out to internationally acclaimed Turkish writer Elif Shafak, her response was immediate and incredibly generous. Elif is a well-known writer, but also a very committed and passionate advocate for LGBTI rights and women's rights, and not only in her own country, Turkey, which at the moment is seeing a rise of oppression against LGBTI people. I wanted to speak to Elif because she's a voice of deep humanity and solidarity, and I knew that she would give a message that would be very empowering to the movement, and I have to say she did not fail to deliver. So, hello, Elif. It's a real thrill for me on behalf of the entire ILGA-Europe team to welcome you. I've been hoping to find ways to engage you in our work for a long time, and so particular warm thanks for accepting our invitation to be part of the gala today.
Thank you so much. I just want to say I really have so much respect for what you're doing, and I find it so important and urgent, needed across the world. So it's a huge pleasure for me to have this conversation together. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So let me start with the first question. I think an important theme for us at the moment is to broaden the conversation around who is part of bringing about social change and making change happen. In our work, we've known for a long time, of course, that we need advocates and allies across all sectors of society if we want to make change. We know it doesn't happen just by working with governments and politicians through laws and policies. We need to work with educators, with employers. We need to work with media and sports and culture, etc. And I think it feels even more urgent, perhaps at the moment, to get more voices and newer voices to speak about the importance of LGBTIQ equality. So with this in mind, I mean, how do you see your work and your role as a writer, as a storyteller in bringing change in society?
Yes, I think words matter enormously. You know, words can hurt, words can also heal. So how we talk about the other, you know, anyone who is deemed to be different in the eyes of mainstream narrative, how we talk about differences, how we talk about diversity is incredibly important. We are aware of the fact that in country after country, we have seen the decline of democracy. But sometimes we don't realize with the decline of democracy comes the loss of appreciation for diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are deemed to be different in the eyes of the mainstream narrative, for whatever reason, this could be, you know, the color of your skin, this could be your political views, anything, if you're deemed to be different, then your life is going to be difficult. And therefore, I think it matters enormously. First of all, words matter, sisterhood matters, solidarity matters, and also stories matter. If we know each other's stories, we will realize that we're not as lonely as we thought we were. So I find it very important to give more voice to silences and to the silenced.
And you're opening the door basically for the other question I wanted to ask you, which is, I think at the moment in time we're in, it feels to us, and we experience it directly at ILGA-Europe, the importance of speaking and pointing to our common humanity, of the importance of staying connected, as you mentioned, with each other, but also with each other's humanity, others' reality. And I think I'm not just speaking of the current context of the pandemic where there's lack of physical connection, but connection through emotions, through empathy, through compassion. And sadly, I mean, we're seeing also that this is not something that that any one of us is immune to. We can all fall into inward-looking mode. We're seeing this happen between social movements. We're seeing also this happen within the LGBTIQ movement at the moment. I mean, you write a lot about the human condition. So what do you see we need to be aware about more in ourselves, in our communities, in our societies, to hold on to that sense of common humanity?
Mm-hmm. I think particularly now more than ever before, there's a lack of deficit of empathy across the world. And empathy is precious. And it's also like a muscle, isn't it? The more we use it, the better we become at it. So just to be able to put yourself in the shoes of another person for a few hours, for a few days, it's not only an intellectual flexibility, cognitive flexibility, it's almost like a spiritual transformation that maybe makes us a bit more humble, a bit more open to, you know, connecting with others, and hopefully a bit wiser. I really think we need stories for that. There's no way I can understand another person's experience if I don't know that person's story. So we need to become better listeners. You know, what minorities are saying, how they're expressing their own experiences is incredibly precious. Let me put it this way, there's a huge power imbalance. There are huge inequalities we need to address. Inequality is not a side issue, it's not a footnote. I think it has to be at the center of all of our efforts from now on. And I deliberately use it in the plural form because whether it's racial inequality, gender inequality, digital inequality, you know, regional inequalities, we need to be very aware of the power imbalance. Who are the people who are not invited to the table when decisions are being made? What are the stories that remain untold, forgotten? How can we put more emphasis on that? In other words, how can we empower the disempowered? How can we rehumanize those who have been dehumanized systematically? This to me is incredibly important if we want to build a better world, a fairer world. And for this, in this conversation, I believe LGBTQ plus minorities and communities need to be in this conversation, in the public space, visible and vocal. We empower each other, you know, and we are part of this conversation. So I find it very important if we're going to build a better world and not deepen the existing inequalities, that we talk about all kinds of inequalities simultaneously.
Well, we couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm gonna turn to the country you're from, and actually I'm gonna use your words of telling a story which we think is not told enough at the moment. Our team at ILGA-Europe has been working very closely with LGBTI activists in Turkey for some years now. And we know just how much more vulnerable they've been made in recent times from being scapegoated politically, but just in general, the context, the very unsafe context in which many in the community are at in terms of the increase in violence and also the pressures on activism per se and violations of freedom of assembly and association and so on. So keeping the situation on the political agenda is something we're working really hard to do alongside supporting the groups in the country. You use your voice to point to the situation in Turkey a lot, as you've done in recent weeks on the Istanbul Convention, the Turkey pulling out of the Istanbul Convention. I guess I want to say, like, what do we need to be saying to governments and institutions and international actors? What do they need to better understand about the situation in Turkey? How do we make the case for them to be paying attention and supporting the groups that work for women's rights, LGBTI rights, democracy and freedom?
Yeah, I think we tend to believe that history always moves forward. We tend to believe that tomorrow is going to be more progressive than yesterday by definition. But that is not the case always necessarily. History has shown us that time doesn't necessarily always go forward. So when I look at a country like Turkey, in fact, we have been going backwards. You know, we have been declining into ultranationalism, more religiosity, more populism, jingoism, and ultimately authoritarianism. Now, when this happens, I think women need to be more alert and minorities need to be more alert, because when democracy is shattered, the first rights that will be curbed and curtailed will be women's rights and minority rights. We have to become better defenders of democracy as women, as minorities, because, you know, it will be taken away from us. Not only in Turkey, though, in country after country, we have seen similarly alarming signs. I think it's very important that we connect with civil society. You know, while we are very critical of the governments in oppressive regimes, we need to at the same time connect with the people, because the people and the government are not the same thing. So if I may, I would like to say two things. Let us make sure that human rights, women's rights, minority rights are always on the table. These are not secondary issues that can be put on a back burner in the name of trade deals or financial deals. Human rights has to be a priority. You know, if we let go of that, what does that say about Europe being European? You know, for me, what it means to be European is primarily values. So how can we let go of those values? But when I say that, what I'm also trying to say is they're universal values. They're not only pertinent to Europe. Human rights is universal. So it has to be at the forefront. But secondly, while we are critical of populist demagogues and autocrats openly, let us always connect with the women, youth, minorities in those civil societies, because their stories are amazing. These are stories of resilience. They are amazingly global souls. They exist. Maybe they don't make the headlines, but their voices matter. So to encourage each other, to support each other is important. I sincerely believe this is the right time for global solidarity, international sisterhood. It matters.
And let me dig a bit deeper into what you're saying, Elif, because anyone who reads your books or hears you speak publicly, they hear you speak explicitly about your support for LGBTIQ human rights. To me, it's very important that you have someone who is, you sound very deliberate in the importance of naming LGBTIQ rights along with women's rights and democracy. Why is it important for you to be engaged in this fight?
Fight it is, indeed. I think fight is the right word. I mean, when I look back at my own writing, my own literary journey, I think it has always been a central part of my storytelling. In almost all my novels, I wanted to give more voice to people who have been pushed to the margins. Rather than paying attention to the center, I focus on the periphery. As a writer, of course, I love stories, I love words, language, but I'm equally drawn to silences. And anyone who is silenced, hurt, disempowered, I want to pay more attention to their stories. So that is my intellectual, maybe, inclination by nature. In all my interviews for decades now, I have been very vocal about my support for the LGBTI, communities. But also, I think I've never had the courage to say this was my personal story too, until recently. It was only a few years ago that at a TED Talk, I was able to come out as bisexual. And it took me many, many years to be able to do that. I wish I had the courage to do it earlier, but I come from a country that is very patriarchal, incredibly homophobic, sexist, and I knew that I would receive a lot of hate speech, a lot of negativity, which is exactly what happened after the TED Talk for weeks and months on end. But I was at that point when I was ready to go through that storm. So no pressure on anyone, but when you're ready, do share your story. It's up to you. But I think what we should never forget is that this beauty, this inner garden, we need to nourish that inner garden and never ever forget that under the same sky, we're all one as humanity. So we should never allow them to deny us our dreams, our dignity, our truth, and our pride.
Well, that almost sounds like you're answering already the last question I wanted to ask, which is, what is the message that you want to send at the moment to everyone who's fighting for LGBTI equality and human rights, knowing that it's never been easy, but at the moment the pressure is particularly harsh? So what message can we send?
All I can say is it's not easy, and every day is a struggle, So this is a long marathon. And we need each other. We need solidarity. We need sisterhood. We need are each other's stories. But what we don't need is to be divided. So, for instance, I live in the UK, and it really, really breaks my heart when sometimes people behave as if there is a conflict between, for instance, women's rights and trans rights, as if there's a conflict, you know, between this human rights and that human rights. If we do that, if we are divided, the only thing that will benefit from it is patriarchy itself, you know. So as women, as LGBTQ plus communities, we cannot be divided. We might sometimes agree, disagree on that minute thing or this minute thing, but let us please never ever lose the core, the essence, which is the fight for equality, which is the fight for diversity and inclusion, which is the fight for human dignity. So we cannot be divided. We need solidarity. And I think it's important to understand that so much is at stake today. You know, democracy is at stake today. Countries can go backwards. We need to be more alert, more aware. Maybe we need the pessimism of the mind, but the optimism of the will, the optimism of the heart, as Gramsci used to talk about. We need both at this moment in time.
Well, I'll just end by saying a whole heartfelt thank you, Elif. On behalf of the whole team that is around me at ILGA-Europe, we're very, very grateful that you made time and accepted our invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
What a fabulous and empowering message that was, wasn't it, Evelyn? Okay, so no one today should feel persecuted or rejected for who they love, and ILGA-Europe will always work towards this and towards empowering the activists in Europe and Central Asia. And today especially, we need your support more than ever. You know what to do, what we have to do. We have to donate whatever amount, 10, 20, 100, 1 million, you have to donate. And remember that in doing that, you become an actor for change. And what do you need to do in order to donate? You need to click on the link on the chat or scan the QR code. Thank you very much. Donate now.
Now, as I said that my talk with Elif was a very special moment for me personally. Now we're coming to a moment I've been waiting for since the very beginning of this evening with great excitement, because my beautiful co-host has agreed to sing for us tonight.
Really?
Yes, you did.
I'm not aware of that.
You did. But before you do, let me really thank you for being here with us tonight. Your generosity and your presence is one of the many ways in which this movement is so powerful.
Well,
so
I have to thank you for allowing me to give something back. Thank you very much. We've known each other for quite a few years now. And, you know, you will have to donate extra money because, you know, I never do that. I never sing without microphone, without reverb. I'm very picky, you know. My name is La Diva Live. And I have a message for our French-speaking people, because I have a lot of French-speaking fans. Alors, les francophones, vous comprenez ce que je dis maintenant? Il faut donner. Donner de l'argent. Vous cliquez sur le lien ou vous scannez le code QR. Are we ready to sing?
We are.
Now, music, Tom. You're gonna sing with me, right? Sung by Carol King. When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care, and nothing is going right. Now ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cruel? They'll hurt you, they'll desert you, they'll take your very soul if you live there. Oh, but don't you let them sing it. You just call out my name louder, and you know wherever I am, I come running, running, running to see you again. Yes, I will. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You've got a friend. Sing it on your own now. Say, you've got a friend. Yes, you do. You've got a friend. You've got a friend. Give it up for Evelyn. You're such a good singer.
Well, thank you very much for
You're
this
very welcome. I
special
hope you
moment.
enjoyed that, and I hope you gave some money. It's worth at least €1. €1,
And
€1.
more, and more. Thank you very, very much for this.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Musical moment. And it is a bit of a time now to tell you a little bit about what, if we reached our target. I'm looking at my colleagues.
Yes, we did.
We did. So thank you very much for donating, but this is only the beginning, and I hope that many of you can continue to support us, you know, weekly, monthly, or just once a year, whenever you have time. As I said at the very beginning, every donation matters. And before we close this evening, I just want to show you again the short video that recapitulates the highlights of ILGA-Europe's work over the past 12 months. Alas, we come to the end of this evening. But before we close, I want to thank a few people. I first want to thank our very inspiring guests for making time to be with us and for generously just giving their support to ILGA-Europe. I, of course, want to thank all of you who've been sitting behind your screen tonight. We know we've been screened out in the past year or so, so we particularly appreciate that you made time to join us virtually this evening. I, of course, want to thank my incredible team, the incredible team of ILGA-Europe who does tireless work throughout the year, day in, day out. This whole thing would not be possible without them. The work would not be possible without them. And special thanks, of course, to the ILGA-Europe GALA crew behind the scenes for putting up this event together in such a smoothless, successful manner. And finally, our thanks again to our sponsor for the evening, Google. Hopefully, next year, we will be back to meeting in person for our gala to celebrate together all the successes of the European and Central Asian LGBTI movement together once more.
And I want to thank you for having me tonight. It's been wonderful to be back here at ILGA-Europe. And I want to thank you for donating tonight. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for having me.
Thank you very much to you. And this is goodbye for me until next time.